Hi, and welcome to the Fierce Boys podcast. I'm your host, Bridget Gildemaster. This is a podcast for those who are ready to leave behind survival mode after abuse, where we talk about what it looks like to embody who you are as an individual, learn to love yourself, and bring to light healing after surviving abuse from relationships and religion. Pop your earbuds in to hear heartfelt and powerful intensity from myself and guests. Be ready to put into place actual tools and gather insight for you to use on your healing journey. Okay, perfect. Hello and welcome back to the Fierce Boys podcast. I'm Bridget Gildemaster, your host. It has been a while since we've had a fresh new guest here. As you all know, we've been cranking out those pre-recorded episodes from like January and February of 24. So I'm so excited to be connected and be on the same screen with a guest again and bring out some fresh content this fall. So today I have Pamela with me, and I am so excited for her story. She has been through so much and come out on the other side just a fierce and empowered woman. And as she said on the show, there's more to her than just her trauma and the things she's been through. As with every survivor, I think that is so important to remember and recognize that even though things have happened to us, they don't have to be our identity forever, and that we can go forward and change everything about us. We do get that choice. And it's just a really cool thing to point out. I love how she's worded everything. We've chatted for a long time beforehand, and I just absolutely love it. She's a very fascinating woman. So I'm excited for you all to meet her. So go ahead. I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more. You can share whatever pieces of your story you want, wherever you want to start, and where you are today.
Well, thank you, Bridget, so much for having me. I want to pretend like this is the first time I heard your voice, but we had such a fun chat for about a good 20 minutes that I feel like your family. But to all of you that don't know me, my name is Pamela Jones. I'm a mother of 9, a grandmother of 30, and a cult survivor. I'm not only a cult survivor, I'm actually an ex-cult thriver. But yes, I'm an American citizen born abroad, and I lived in Mexico for 37 years. I was married into an FLDS Mormon Mexican cult, and we lived amongst the cartel territory. So I lived in a lot of fear for most of my childhood. But today, fast forward 25 years since my escape, I'm an entrepreneur. I own a business called Exclusive Services by My Girls, and my daughters, I have 5 daughters, and myself, we run a house cleaning company, which has been an amazing experience. And I'm an author, also a podcaster, guest, and a busy woman, evidently. Yeah, here I think I know everything I'm going to say, but once you put on the spot, I have to tell you, Bridget, when you were introducing me, I'm just still in awe of, I got the chills, and I feel like she's talking about me. Of course, I've never heard you talk about me before, and I'm getting the chills, and I'm thinking, man, I mean, I already know everything I've done. I know everything I thought and believe and how I got through it, and I still feel the chills like, wow, that's me. So I don't guarantee it, but I expect that a lot of you listeners may too experience the chills, because as survivors of trauma, and sometimes someone's trauma cannot be as severe in the eyes of beholders as others, but to the individual, it's definitely a very hard and traumatic experience. And I feel like all of us listeners have something that they'll be able to relate to in my story as mothers, as an entrepreneur, as a woman, and all the trauma, obviously, and a neighbor, and with what's happening on in the world with all those concerns. I mean, there's so many things that draws us together. And I just feel like that's the thing I love the most. That's why I agreed to be a guest on Bridget's beautiful platform, is because I just wanted to give a piece of myself to her listeners, and also take a little bit of her so far, and hopefully her listeners with me as maybe new friends or acquaintances, or someone that we can touch each other's lives. But I don't know where to begin, to be honest. Like, oh my goodness. There's just so much about my story that I don't want to rattle on. I know these have to be short little recordings. So, just to tell you a little bit about me, I've already mentioned that I was married into a cult when I was 15. And I was taught that a woman was not to be seen nor heard. She was only to supply offspring to her husband and to raise his posterity, and that would be the only way she would be able to enter the kingdom of God. In fact, once she died, if there wasn't a husband on the other side of the veil of death to reach down and take a hold of her hand and in a very certain manner and call her by a certain name, she would never enter into heaven, and therefore she would be a daughter of perdition and live in perpetual hell. So, being born to such a nefarious cult, I hate to even say these words, but I don't know how many of you guys have heard, but I'm sure on this podcast you will do some research. But was a gentleman by the name of Herbal LeBaron, and he is known as the Mormon Charles Manson. Well, he was one of the brothers of the founders of the church that I married into. Therefore, I lived in the aftermath of his murders. He's implemented the practice of the blood atonement, which is something that fundamentalisms believe is a way for family members to recompense their sins, is by their life being taken. So in the cult that I was married into, that practice was not something that anybody participated in, but Herbal LeBaron became very envious and jealous. And due to his greed and desire for power, he proceeded to murder several members of the church. So he left the church and he created a list. My father and several members of my family was on his list, and we lived in perpetual fear of him. And I think the last I heard, he had participated in over 300 murders. Anyways, he was captured and transported into the United States, where he died in the federal prison in 1981. So that is the same year that I got married. So now I'm free from this murderous Manson dude that's off killing everyone, and I can live at peace. So I marry into a half Hispanic family, marry a very racist man, and he proceeds to tell me he will marry other women. So that's the practice. The only way to get to heaven is that. So I did my part as a dutiful wife. I was his first wife, and I gave him 5 other wives. I suffered severely. I was pregnant 17 times in the just shy of 19 years that I was married. And I gave birth to 9 beautiful babies, as I've told you before. I became a midwife. I delivered most of his children. I was an entrepreneur since I was young, but a woman making money was not acceptable. And I'd find all kinds of little ways. I'd sell cheese, and then he'd take that away from me. And then I'd garden and I'd sell vegetables. And it was like no matter what I touched, it would turn to gold. Obviously, we lived in such extreme poverty that I didn't know, what even to do with the money, or what I didn't have an imagination of how I would spend it. My goal was to try to feed my children and family. But the practices of the church was to keep you perpetually pregnant, keep you wanting for everything. So everything I needed, he kept me wanting. If I needed shoes the size of size 10, somehow or another, he could only find size shoes 8.5. So my shoes would be too tight. I mean, he bought my shoes. He decided what they were. Like, he was so trained to keep me wanting for everything I needed from A to Z. You talk about anything in marriage, anything intimate, anything supportive or loving, or even to be able to trust or turn to them, or he kept me away from my family. And that was the belief that was how they could keep control over the women and keep us married and home with him. In the year 2000, I had decided that I no longer could live that life. I had my 9 children. My oldest child was 17 and my baby was 1.5. I was still breastfeeding her. I was 34 years old and I decided to escape. I'd found a $5 bill in the laundry that I was doing. And one day I had snooped through his briefcase and found 2 credit cards. I didn't know what they were or how to use them. They had my name, Pamela Jones, on them, so I took them. I got permission to go to the United States to visit for a little while. And my story was, is if you let me go to the United States, I'll come home and be submissive and I'll help you get more wives and I'll help you, build your kingdom for God. He laughed and agreed to let me go. But he had warned me several times before if I ever tried to leave him, he would plaster my pictures all over the border and they would catch me and return me home. So I left in February of 2000 with a $5 bill, 4 little suitcases, 4 Mexican blankets, and 9 beautiful children. And only one of my children was American citizen and myself. We headed to Dublin, Mexico, and that crosses over into Douglas and to Arizona or New Mexico. I can't remember exactly. So off we went. I went to the Mexican Council. I tried to finish up some paperwork to get my children legal, and they did not give that to me. So I crossed my children over that border. I studied and practiced with my children, my address that was on my driver's license from the United States. And we told this big story. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was doing. My ex-husband had seen that I started becoming rebellious, so he started to starve us. So we were super hungry. I get into Juarez, I go into the supermercado, and I ask them if they take credit cards. And they said, oh, yes. And I thought, well, how do you use it? She points over to the machine. She shows me. I run through this store that's so full of food compared to what I was used to. And I picked up a few bananas, a couple of bags of oranges, a loaf of bread, and some milk, and ran outside to my kids to feed them. Long story short, fast forward, I end up getting across the border and came into Utah. I had a girlfriend there and I started planning my escape. And my children went to work and I started cleaning houses. I asked for a divorce through the phone, and 6 months later, I was divorced. I remember going down to the mailbox and opening it and seeing all these pieces of mail that said Pamela Jones. And my heart would be just so excited. And I would just visualize the people that were thinking about me. There's someone clear across from who knows where that owns this store called Arby's thought of Pamela Jones and sent her this 2 sandwiches for the price of 1. And I would get them and I'd clip out the little ticket and I'd put it in my little wallet. And I couldn't wait to go to this so-called Arby's place and give them this ticket because someone from their company thought that I would enjoy 2 hamburgers for the price of 1. They must have known how hungry I was, I thought. I pretty soon started seeing all these little credit card application stuff coming through the mail, and I'd sign up for everything that came in. I didn't even understand it. Before you know it, I had, I think, 13 credit cards. And the bills came due. I was like, okay, how are you going to pay this? What is this? But those credit cards fed my family for a few months while I established cleaning. As time would have it, I moved to Minnesota with all my children. And there was about 200 families from the colony that lived in Minnesota. And a lot of my father's children lived here. And I had been taken away from the children, my mom's and dad's kids, for so long. I just thought, now that I'm divorced and free, I want to go live by them. So I came up here, and to my surprise, excuse me, to my surprise, the phone calls were not answered. And I was so innocent and naive back then. I just assumed, oh, they don't know me yet, or they're too busy. I'm going to show them, that I'm not a burden, that I can take care of myself. I just want to say hello. I didn't want them to think that I wanted to take anything off their table. Or later on, I found out that they were too afraid to get involved, and I had become rebellious, and the colony had shunned me because of my actions. And they had prophesied, not my brothers, but the church had prophesied that God was going to kill one of my children very soon. But unbeknownst to me, I didn't know what they were plotting or thinking. I'm just happy-go-lucky here in America. And I started cleaning houses. I put all 9 of my children into school, except for the baby. So all 8 of my children into school. And my first parent-teacher conference, the kids had straight Fs. And I would go to every parent-teacher conference, and they think you have these little redheads and blonde and freckled blue-eyed children, and they can't speak English very good. Where did you come from? And they were shy. My kids weren't allowed to go to school. And I would see these straight Fs on every single, even PE, they got an F on it. And I would just sit, by the time I get to the last kids student parent teacher conference, I just start crying. I just thought I can't give anymore. I can't come in before school with this kid or come in after school. I was cleaning houses, trying to provide, trying to heal from the cult and trying to heal my children. And then at the same time, all my family, everybody I knew were opposing me and staying away because they didn't want to mingle with the rebellious woman. So I just got super scared about that and decided to take little bites. So I sat the kids all around and just said, all we're going to shoot for is 1D. If we can get a D, everybody get 1D. As time would have it, my children became A and B honor roll students. I proudly put the stickers on the back of my vehicles. Child after child came home with these bumper stickers that I got to put on. My child is an honor roll student at such and such school. And part of the cult's teaching is that you're retarded or you're mental or you're dumb because they believe that education wasn't necessary. All you need to do was be, hard work. If you could be a hard worker, you'd make it. And to this day, if I ever answer my phone and someone from the colonies on the other end, I can tell immediately by the way they answer the phone, who is this? And it's like, wait, you called me, you know who I am. Hello, who are you? And it's just such this education is just non-existent. And I understand why, because if you kept everybody ignorant, then you could control them. So I know that was the practice. They were ugly and they were dumb, stupid. Women were not to learn anything. And I learned real quick that I didn't know very much when the kids would come home with homework and I couldn't understand it, much less know what to do with that and help the kids. I didn't even know who the president of the United States was. And in fact, the first school year, all my children were in school. It was in May-ish, yeah, April, May. There was a terrible storm. I was at the post office and I heard it, and a terrible lightning bolt, the clouds and the lightning bolt hit really close. You know how that can happen. I mean, I thought, wow. And I tell the lady behind the desk, ma'am, that was close. She says it sure was. I no more than get home and my phone rings and the school has called me to come pick up my children. I asked him, what is going on? It's not even time for them to get out of school. And they said, you need to pick up your daughters. A lightning bolt hit here and a child was hurt. So now I'm shaking in my boots. Now I believe that God has sent the lightning bolt to kill my children because that's what was prophesied. So I jump on my vehicle and I drive down there. I couldn't get there fast enough. When I got there, Fox News was there. And I go running to go inside, and my daughter saw me and they came running. And you can see this clip still in the news if you go back to that day in 2000. And they're running to mommy, and I throw my arms around them. And they tell me, so the little girl that passed, her name was Rachel Green, and she was the best friend to my daughter. And my daughter tells the story. They were running on the blacktop to get into the bus, and Rachel had gone ahead of her. No, my daughter had gone ahead of Rachel and had gotten on the bus and was looking for her when the lightning hit her and took her life. And I remember in my stomach, and I don't know if anybody can even relate to this. I'm imagining you could, but I believed that God had missed my child, and I was thinking, man, you just missed her. How did this happen? And I really believed that He had sent that for my daughter, and she was my middle child, which was best friends. And for some reason, she'd gotten on the bus earlier. And for a little while, I believed that. And it took me some time to realize that God doesn't miss, first of all. Definitely, that wasn't His intention. But it was how brainwashed I was. That fear that my children would be taken from me. Fast forward here to Minnesota. I started my cleaning company, and the biggest job I ever did was raise my children to be sound and solid humans, to put them back out in our communities, to be great church members, parents, neighbors, serving their community, business owners. And I feel like that is my greatest accomplishment when I sit around and I see all 52 members of my family and see how patriotic they are and how involved they are in their communities and their churches and with their children and the sports and then their jobs and their services and the integrity they have. I feel like that is my biggest accomplishment. It's hard to market that to anybody because every mother thinks that, and I know that, but I truly believe that.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah. Anyways, you know me, I can go on for a while with my story. Fast forward, several of my clients told me you need to write your book, but I just felt like I couldn't. There was just so much pain and so much fear in my book. But finally, in 2017, I started the journey of writing my memoir. And it was a long, hard journey. COVID hit, put us behind in 3 years, but it has been picked up and it will be dropping in 2025. And it will be the journey of healing and coming from this cult, escaping, coming to America, and then stumbling upon the American dream, whatever that is. And being able to share my story with as many who listen. And I'm trying to sugarcoat my story because I don't feel like we have the time to get into all of it. But definitely it was a very trying time, and there was a lot of things that I had to learn. And being that I wasn't allowed to educate myself in the 19 years that I was married, I decided to go back to the teachings of Jesus Christ, which I wouldn't pick up the Bible, and I still really don't pick up the Bible or any other kind of scriptures because it takes me back to such pain, though I believe, and I'm a believer, but I believe in all truth, no matter where it comes from. And when I started my healing, I went back to things I remembered that I had been taught or had been read to me about Jesus Christ. And one of the things that really started me on the journey of healing and realizing what was happening to me is when I remembered or re-remembered the story of Gethsemane and Jesus Christ. And um, I remember the story going something, I'm not going to be able to quote it correctly because I'm not a scriptorian, but I remember the story was he was in Gethsemane and he was praying and he was with his disciples and he was off in the distance and he asked God to remove the cup. Obviously, it was according to the writings and the belief, he was going to be crucified for all of us. That's what was always taught. Anyways, so he prays that God would remove the cup from him, but he says, but not my will be done. He says, your will be done. And I already knew that by heart, but then all of a sudden the bells and whistles went off and I thought, wait a minute, why didn't he send Jesus off to get a bunch of wives and a bunch of kids? And then he could go on to heaven. That's the way. That's what was taught to me. And I realized that it was a lie. I realized that at the time, and my journey with my spirituality at that time, I realized that this Jesus was probably the only way, but it definitely wasn't a bunch of women. Men weren't supposed to be lustful and feel that need and have all these kids they couldn't father. It just made no sense. And since I realized that was a lie, that was like that thread. What do they call it that you pull from a sweater and the whole sweater unravels?
Mhm.
It was that little thread that I pulled on, and then everything fell apart. And then I entered into the journey of healing and finding my faith and what I believe. And I am not tied down to any one belief, but I definitely have my walk and my spirituality that works for me and what I believe and what I've healed and what I've seen and what I do. And it's the thread of my life. It's in everything I do. And I'm so in awe of how generous and graceful and gracious God has been to me and my children. And that lots of times, and I talk about this all the time when people are telling me, like they're going through something really difficult, and they say, I just can't pray to God because when I ask God for patience, He sends me a storm, or I ask God for help, then I get sick, or they're telling me all the stories. And I said, yeah, I understand what you're talking about, but how about if you just turn around, look back in your past, anything you've gone through in your life. I said, I lost a granddaughter back in 2016. She died of SIDS. I believe it's 16. Sometimes I get mixed up now. On the same day that Prince died. And anytime I feel that life is, and I could go on and tell you a lot of struggles and tragedies. In fact, this year, 2024, has been one of my hardest years on record. And every time I've come against a difficulty, one of my sons had cancer, and one of my daughters broke her back, and my son-in-law died suddenly and left 7 little children widowed, and that's within the last 10 months, not to mention my story coming out and the trouble that's causing to people. But anyways, what I tell everybody is the way I get through these things, instead of going to my knees and pleading and praying for help with the circumstances and to this God that I cannot see, I just turn around and look at my past. And I find somewhere in my life, which I can find it anywhere, but going back to the time my granddaughter passed away, and I just say, can you do that for me again? Can you give me that strength again? Can you hold me like you did then? And if I do that, then I feel it's so hopeful and I can move forward. But it is hard because life is hard and there's things that scare you, especially with the big family. There's always someone getting hurt and doing something silly, or the world's changing, or the schools are changing, and all these grandkids out there. And I'm just, it might sound cliche, it might sound like so silly, but it works if I stop beseeching and praying and seeking something that's ahead of me that I can't see and don't know, and I'm scared, and what will you do, or how will this turn out? If I just stop for a minute and just turn my little body, I'm not little as you can see, but my bodacious body around, I'm a tall girl. I turn around and I look anywhere in my past 60 years of life, from physical abuse, be just shy of losing my life, from so many things. And if I look there, I just know that I was made to do great things, and that all I need is the strength I had on that day, you know, and it seems to work. And I hope this is inspiring to someone out there. Maybe it will work for you. I'm not no priestess or no doctor or no one that's qualified to give any advice, truly. I've been told by, if I've been told by one, I've been told by thousands, and this is no exaggerations. And I've been told, Miss Jones, you go through in 5 years what most people don't go through in a lifetime. And I just mentioned to you what 10 months of my life were. Just rolled it off the top of my tongue. And that's not to mention all the good things that have gone on in those 10 months. But it's definitely it's a source that I can dip into. And people have asked me, how did you do it, Miss Jones? And I think gratitude was a key point, turning back and looking at my past and seeing all the areas that I truly was able to get through. It just encourages me that I can do anything. So I trying to minimize my story, because I could spend 45 minutes on talking about why I wear heels. Not to mention I'm 5'11" and I wear 5-inch heels, but there's a whole story in that. Or why I came up with the story, sign my name 9 times. Well, I have 9 children, and the only time I was allowed to pick up a pen and sign anything in 19 years of my life is on their birth certificate. And now I sign paychecks to thousands. That in itself, if we just talked about that, would tell you my story. And it's not saying I will this and I am this and I'll do this. It was never any of those things. It was more stepping in and being. And the best example I can give you as a grandmother, I look at my newest born grandson. His name is Rocky Thomas. Well, he's 6 months old now. But as I'm going through this realization and I look at him, he's brand new born and he's already Rocky Thomas. He already is being himself. He's not doing anything. He's not doing a good boy. He's not doing a boy. He's not doing a baby. He's not doing anything. He's being. And in that little body is everything he needs to be able to achieve greatness and to be, what I would think the pinnacle for him would be as a father, to be a leader, to be a strong protector and provider for his family, to be selfless, to give to the community, to save lives, to create life, to grow maybe food or whatever we're going to need, to be creative. I mean, and that's all in him. And when I look at him, he's just being him already. He's perfect. And I know it sounds silly, but truly looking at you, Bridget, I don't know if anybody gets to see this video, but I get to see you right now. And you are just being Bridget. Your cute little glasses, your beautiful little haircut, all perfectly, I don't know if it's hairspray or not, but it's in perfect condition. And you're being. You're not doing, Bridget. Who could tell you how to do that? Where's the book that says this is how you do, Bridget? It's not been written. There's no such thing. You're being Bridget, and the beautiful soul that you are. You're on this platform. You're talking to, now I'm not a stranger. You know a little bit about me, but you're spending time with me. I'm just being Pamela. I'm not doing Pamela. And it's not in the doing that we actually achieve our greatness. It's in the being. That doesn't mean we don't get up and we don't take care of our children and we, send out our emails, take care of our clients, go into work, be a wife, heal, just to heal. It takes a lot of determination and it takes forgiveness and it takes, maybe we won't understand why we were caused so much pain, why people around us hurt us. We will never understand that, but that's something they have to carry. We get to decide what we're going to do with that. Are we going to be forever perpetual victims? Are we going to take whatever it was that was set out to hurt us and destroy us, determine who we are? We're going to take that and find a way to show greatness. If you enter a room and it's pitch dark, do you need the light to see? You do. But if we go around the rest of our life being mad because the room was dark and I come from a dark room and I was raised in a dark room and dark room is all I know and dark room, it's like, hey, girl, did you ever think about just maybe turning on the light? Yes, you were born and you were put into this heavy, painful situation. But you can turn on the light. And then whatever's in there is not so scary. And I believe, I don't know your story, Bridget, but I believe you ventured out of that room and you went on to see, hey, I know what's in there. And I walked past it and I know, but I have some control. Now, not only that, I'm going to start telling people the signs. And hey, if you can't find the light switch, look for the little crack in the ceiling or somewhere and focus on that little beam of light, because outside of that light is where you will create greatness. And I feel like the times that I felt that way, and I would just focus on I always picture it like this big cardboard box, this little pinhole of light. And I think that's me. And I can get through. My freedom is through that pinhole. And the more you focus on it, the way you can see yourself out of it, and before you know it, it comes crashing down. And I'm sure you have a different way of explaining, but it's the same way of how we get through it. People ask me, what'd you do? I can't say I took 20 steps, then I turned to the right, and then I drank a glass of water, and then I picked up this book. And I mean, it's just so hard to tell individuals how we healed, how we got through our trauma. But all I can tell you is my mental state and the more simple I could make it, the more tangible it was. If I tried to look everywhere in the dark room for the light switch, and I know there has to be a light, there has to be matches, there should be a candle. And I'm thinking what everything I've seen on TV and everything the friends told me and people told me, and I don't stand still for a minute and connect with what is the truth. Oh, there's a pinhole, there's the light, I can see that. And I think that we each have, that's what makes your platform so beautiful, is it's filled with women and stories, and they're pretty much saying the same thing but different, how we found our way. And our, I don't know Bridget's hope for sure, but I would venture to say part of your hope is that there's another listener out there that gets an aha, something they can say, wow, that's right. I can do that. And I've tried to sugarcoat my story because I didn't want to scare anybody. And I had a podcast draft yesterday that was so heavy that I told Bridget, I just really want to be light, but I feel like it's an injustice to the followers, but they can go and listen and find out more about my story. But what I want to do, if I can, is just share more of the hope. And I remember my pastor, when I started church hunting and trying to figure out my faith, I remember my pastor taking me aside after a year being at his church, and he says, I've always wanted to ask you this, Miss Jones. And I had never sat down and shared my journey story. He had just heard people talk that knew. He says, have you ever been on something? Have you ever like taken up drinking, or, prescriptions, or he smoked weed? I don't know. He's asking me all this stuff, and I'm smiling. He said, no, I'm not judging you, Miss Jones. If I've ever known any woman that merited a glass of wine at the end of the day, it would be you. And so I'm not judging you. I'm just curious, how did you get through this? And I said, okay, because you are my pastor and I'm going to be vulnerable, I'm going to tell you the truth. So he braces himself, he's ready, he's not going to judge me. And I said, one time I considered Tylenol PM, but then I just couldn't bring myself to doing it. And he looked at me and I said, I'm being serious. One time I considered it, Tylenol PM. And he just laughed. I said, no, I never, that wasn't an option. I was an only parent and I needed all my senses at the time to help me protect my children. But it was kind of cute, his thoughts of how the heck did you get through that? And to be honest, if I remember those days, it's almost like remembering bungee jumping. People tell me when they bungee jump, but anytime they drive past the place where they did the bungee jumping, their stomach flips. They get scared. They feel that adrenaline. I said, well, let me just tell you, raising my kids and getting them through teenage years, I feel exactly that way. Like, it scares me. And I'm so thankful that we got through it, but it was very, very hard times to get each, and I could barely get one kid change his attitude. You can put a kid in a room, you can ground them, you can do all you want to them, but you can't change their attitude. They do that. And if I could work with them to see that I knew we were different, but that I loved them and that they were a part of this family and they were part of the pack of pencils. If you leave the group of pencils, easily you can be broken. But if you stay in the pack, it's going to be a lot harder for you to break because you have all the support. And constantly trying to bring them back in and connect and stay supported. And I no more than get one back in and another one would challenge and like, I don't want him. Why do we have all these kids? And da 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 da. Well, if I didn't have all these kids, you wouldn't be born. I want to be like everybody else. Well, we wouldn't have had the last 7 kids, and your kid number 4 or 5, you wouldn't have been here. It's like, oh darn, like, you know. So yeah, that's just kind of the makeup of what it took to raise these children and then to heal the children. And they still have things that they have to sort out, like we all do. They were raised by a very traumatized mom. They were in my body for an amount of time, and that causes there's some takeaway, DNA takeaway that they receive without understanding. And then they are born and little under that. So there's that. And not too long ago, it's kind of cute. One of my sons told me, Mom, I don't agree with what you believe in. I don't agree with how you raised us. I don't agree with what you thought was right or whatever. He's telling me, And I normally, that back 10 years ago, that would hurt me, but I'm listening to him and I said, I get it, son. I said, you know what, son? I don't agree with how I raised you either. I don't believe you're going to go to hell if you take your shirt off and swim in the pool. But when you were little, I did believe that. I don't believe that you need to eat, raw oatmeal every morning to get all the healthy carbs and what sugar's going to cause your teeth to rot anymore. But when I was raising you, I did. So, son, I don't believe that either. And he just sits back and smiles like, oh, okay, I get it. I said, yeah, I was a victim of abuse and lies and a very treacherous, nefarious cult that I escaped, and I had to heal. And you kids were with me, and we healed together. But it was kind of cute, like, hey, and tomorrow I might believe something different.
Mhm.
I have that right. I reserve that right.
That's so beautiful. There's so much about your whole story where, like, you're just showing them to be human, and that I think that's the most beautiful part of, that parenting journey is just being like, you're not sitting there being justifying everything or anything. You're just saying, yeah, I'm human too, and this is what I went through and this is why. And I think that's the most beautiful part of that, being a
Yeah,
parent.
yeah.
Yeah.
My children will ask me, Mom, they have a couple of kids each or here or there, and they'll say, Mom, I swear, how did you do this? And you had so many. And I just sit down. I said, I'm doing it. I did it just like you're doing it. I
Mhm.
said, I was on my knees. I was scared as you are. I was exhausted. There would be times after building my business, my career, I was the breadwinner and the only parent every which way, not to mention I'm a perfectionist. So that's a curse. Anyways, I would come at the end of the day, and I'm not kidding you, I could not move. I had tore my ACL, fractured my tibia, my knee had gone out. I'm trying to clean houses with crutches. I'm so exhausted. My mother has moved into town. I'm financially trying to help her, whatever's all going on. And I'm so exhausted. Every bit of my body is in such pain, emotionally, physically. I'm lonely. I don't even know how to fall in love, because who would want me? Who would love me? I was told so many times, no one's going to want you. What do you bring to the table? You're nothing. You're just a woman. And I don't think I really believed it, but whenever I would be weak and tired, then those gremlins that live in our head, my sister calls it the bitch in your head, would start yapping at me, and I would just be in every which way exhausted. You name it, I was spent. Money wise spent, physically, in every which way. There was nothing I could draw from. And I dropped my poor body off in bed, and I'd wake up in the morning and run a marathon again. And there was no questions, there was no options. I had 9 children that needed me in so many different ways. And my goal was just, what's next? In fact, I made myself a ring, which is so funny. Now I see the saying. It's so funny how that happens, but I see it similar sayings everywhere. But at the time, it was something that I had created when I was in the colonies. So about 35 years ago. And I had done several other things for my ex-husband, and I ran a lot of his wives, a lot of his kids, a lot of the stuff that was going on. It's a long, long story. And I remember just thinking, anytime my husband at the time, but anybody in the church would ask me, can you do something, or will you do something? Will you take on Relief Society? Will you teach the children? Will you manage the dairy farms so we can make cheese? Will you, whatever they'd ask me? And I'd always think about it for a second, say, yeah, I can. And then the next thing I say, oh, not only can I do it, I will do it. And then my attitude was, what's next? And I always have had that motto for 35 years after I escaped the cult. And people don't know that because it's the ugliest little ring you could possibly see, but I'm showing it to you, Bridget. It's just right there. Nothing that pretty. You can't even read it. But it says, I can, I will, what's next? And that is how I approached everything. Obviously, I had to make the decision first. Yes, I can do that. And there's things that I could say, no, I can't do that. No, I can't loan you money. No, I can't have my children babysit for you. No, there's times I do say no. But once I was at a place where I felt, I would say I can. And not only can I do it, I will. And then from there, what's next? And I've had several coaches and several people shame it and, no, no, you shouldn't, and try to correct it and teach me something. Oh, no, no, you shouldn't write that. You should say, you should rest, put something more like, get that off your finger and write, you can, you will, I'm done, or you can, you will, you're enough. And I just smiled. I said, no, my personality is I can once I decide, and I will what I have decided that I can do, and then I will get it done, and I'm prepared for what's next. And I have lived that model my whole life. As I'm right here with you, Bridget, I can meet you here. I will be on your podcast. What are we doing next?
I love it. I hope that you are so proud of yourself because I'm proud of you. Like just everything,
Oh,
everything. I mean, just so many things, so many golden nuggets here, so much wisdom, like everything you have to share and you've been through. And like you said, you just move on to the next thing is so powerful. Every little experience you've had and you felt through it, like I just think it's so brave how you shared. You haven't, you know, you didn't even take Tylenol. Like that's such a brave thing. And yet you're experiencing life, and not that medications are bad or anything,
no,
everybody needs different
of
things, but
course.
you were able to just experience life and feel through those emotions and heal through it and be on the other side with everything you've had to offer. And you ended it for your children and your grandchildren. I'm still in
Oh,
the little children's phase, and yet you get to see the whole big picture
oh,
already. It's
yeah.
so beautiful.
Well, my plan as an author, my plan, God may have other plans, but my plan, enjoying this ride and sharing my story and motivating and inspiring anybody. I don't know why my voice keeps doing this. I haven't talked much today. I've only worked with my fingers. But my plan is, my mind had a brain freeze. What were we talking about? Oh, yes. So my plan, to add to what you were saying, is I think of, writing my memoir was to leave this legacy, this story for my children and grandchildren and great grandchildren to remember the price that was paid for them to come to America. And are they gonna fall victim to it's hard, or are they gonna get up and not say make me proud, but take it to the next level? That was my goal. And I started my company to leave a legacy where any and all of my children would have a job if they needed it to provide for their family. And now my next step, which is I'm on the what's next, and it's a fun journey, is I'm writing kids books for my for my grandchildren. So I will write a kid. I'll put it. Well, I don't think it will go out and be published because I'm just writing it for them. But I'll make it so it's publishable, and they'll get the hard drive to that. And there'll be different little pieces of that grandchild written in a very fictitious character book. I'm thinking I'm going to be the zebra because everybody calls me black and white. So I think that's will be their grandmother, the zebra, and they might be whatever, the owl or whatever they are. But the stories, and it will have different things that we've done together. And my biggest goal, and I know this sounds silly, but my biggest goal, and I see it in my head, and when I'm telling you, my heart is just like, oh, this is the pinnacle, is just picture my grandchild reading this book to their grandchild. And I just feel like at that point I have arrived, and that is what I want to do for my great grandchildren that I may or may not get to meet. My granddaughter, she's 20, more than likely, and then they're every age after that. I'll be a great grandmother within 5 years. I possibly could be a great grandmother before I turn 60, but either way, I just feel like there's a lot of life ahead, and I really want to leave something here to remind my grandchildren so they can remind their great grandchildren how much they were loved and how much me as a grandmother, but humanity in a way that we are made to do hard things and we believe in each other and we need connection. And I really want to tastefully, I got 30 books to write, but and probably in counting. By the time I get done, I'll probably have 45. But either way, that is my goal. That is going to be something that when I think about it, it warms my heart the most that I could be gone from this long journey at some point, and my great grandchildren will still hear. Maybe I'm a zebra, but they'll hear words of wisdom and things I learned and shared with their grandmother when I was their grandmother's grandmother. And that's probably a little sappy, but it's truly something that I can't wait to do.
No, that's so special. That's so awesome. That'll be adorable.
It'll
Oh,
be fun.
very
Who
cool.
knows? Maybe it'll be a hit and I'll be long gone. I don't know, but
That happens.
Yeah.
Oh, how
And I think
fun.
that it's such simple things. We all think we have to do big gestures or very expensive things to be, leaving generational wealth but just teaching a child how to learn trades or learn family, traditions or recipes or just words of wisdom that's been passed down generational. Those things are priceless. And I think we shouldn't undervalue those things because
Mhm.
so many times we get caught up into social media and big money and buy and spend. But truly the valuable things are, spending the time and doing the little things. As a mom, your kids are going to remember what they're going to remember. Trust me, I meet with my kids all the times, and the things they say I said, and the things they said I did. Huh, mom, you, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, who raised you? Where's your mother?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
It's so cute. And the other day, I told my kids, I was looking through some old pictures because my memoir is needing some photos, and I'm seeing all my children when they're little, and my heart is just, I'm not going to say it's breaking, but there's that feeling of loss and longing and pain. And I'm tears, and I'm going through this. And my kid's like, Mom, you okay? And I just said, well, I had 9 beautiful babies. I blinked my eyes and woke up with 9 strangers. Who are you guys? What do you mean you don't like this? What do you mean that's your favorite color? Since when did you start sleeping with the what? It's like, what happened? Where are my babies? My oldest is 42 and my baby's 26. And they're all married, and it's cute, but it's still in my heart. It's like, where are my babies? That beautiful hair that I could comb every day, or the
Mhm.
boys make fun of me licking my thumb and getting a little crusty out or cleaning,
Right.
and they tease me, how about you do it now? And I said, oh my goodness, you're so tall. I don't want to have to reach up that high, clean your face or whatever. But it's just such a beautiful circle of life. And I believe our creator has made us exactly perfect with everything we need for the season that we're in. And I love that about my life. I love about the opportunity. I'm known to talk a lot, so you'll have to shut me down.
No, that's okay. Your reflections and insight are just absolutely inspiring. Like so impactful. Like your message will reach all places. It's just amazing how
Well,
much
that's my
you
goal.
have to
My
share.
goal is and I know this sounds funny, but I don't know what you eat. I'm going to pretend this a cupcake, a cupcake's delicious and it, at the right time. I mean, if we're not watching our weight or if we're not eating sugar, but let's just say it's got all the ingredients that we would be our favorite. And I've always said this, I've used this as a metaphor. A cupcake is delicious, but is it worth $1,000? And sometimes I feel like we have to look at what we're doing and the price that it's costing us, and we make the decision, are these things worth the price? Yes, it's good. There's certain things in life is really good, but is it worth as much time as it taking from me? Is it worth, whatever I call it, the price? And I just encourage, especially mom, don't ever underestimate something. That the world may say, oh, you're so lucky you got this. I don't know, what are the name of all those fancy purses that everybody buys? Louis Vuitton or Coco Chanel. I don't know what the heck they're called because I don't care about brands. But, they're marketing these things and everybody's using them. Everybody. But is it worth the price? Is it worth, if it's a Louis Vuitton, is it worth the trip to Disney without your kids for that? Or these are extreme examples, but the metaphor is, a cupcake is great and sweet, but the price. And so what I tell people is about my story, it's just a cupcake. It's just a cupcake. And because it cost me $1,000, I want to give a little piece to as many people as I can. I know you're not going to get full, but just taste this. Hopefully it'll inspire
Yeah.
you to be a baker or to go get your own. Or I would give you the whole thing. I really would. But It cost me $1,000 and I want to share it with as many people as I can. And that's how I look about my story. It cost me
That's
so much to be
amazing.
Pamela Jones, to be well-rounded, to be sound, to be solid, to be vulnerable, to be healed. I still have my things for sure. To be open to be loved again. I've been with my sweetheart for 13 years. That was a lot of work. To let my kids go and be the humans that they were created to be, and let them introduce themselves to me instead of me telling them this is who you are. Let them tell me who they are. And it was a lot of work. And so I look at all of that like this $1,000 cupcake. And it's like, okay, I could gobble it all down right now. And then what, It's like, no, I want to share it. So being here with you is my way of giving you a piece of my little cupcake. Hopefully it inspires you. Maybe you add it to your array of treats or cupcakes or whatever you're doing in your world. And it's just one more little thing that can add to your experience on this earth, whether I meet you in person or I ever see you again, or we ever cross paths, or I get to message any of your audience, or whatever happens in the future, only God knows, because we have no idea. I want to make sure that I leave your platform and your stage dropping off a little piece of my cupcake. And I have plenty of cupcake, but I have lots of places I want to leave my.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I do want to be respectful of your time, and I have to go here too. So that's a perfect note though. Yes. Tell us how my audience can find you, social media, website, all that good stuff.
Okay. So I will try to talk slow. So one of the things, if you want to hear about my cult and what I escaped, go to the podcast that's This Is Actually Happening. And you can find that podcast on, is it Wandery, how do you say that? And Apple Podcast, Spotify, Audible, and where else? YouTube. You can find it there, or you can actually go to my page and find it there. And it is season 14, episode 336. And you'll see a picture of me, Blondie that I am, and it will say how I escaped a cult. And then also you can go to pamelaspeaks.live. That's my website, and you can see all about me there and what I'm up to, my projects. These are a lot of things for you to go to. Then you can go to Instagram and find me under Pamela_speaks. You will find a lot of fun information there. I'm also a host of a podcast called Wicked Confessions Uncensored.com. You can go there and hear all about this upcoming project, of all the behind the scenes and the hypocrisy of the cult and all their secrets, scandals, and stories. Go there and click on the subscribe button, send me your email, and I'll keep you posted on the salacious, delicious episodes that will be dropping. It's not kid friendly, but I'm pretty careful, but just in case. And also, I am the host and owner of Sisters Gone Platinum, and you can find us on YouTube. And that is a podcast with my sister, Victoria, and myself, and we talk about life after the cult and all the memories and stories and thoughts and ideas and beliefs and things we've learned. There's 52 episodes there. Go have fun. Not all of them are as good as some of them, but some of them are really good. That is it. And you can find me here on Fierce Voice with Bridget.
That's awesome. I am excited to do a little bit more digging in on you and your story. It's
good.
I like things like, I like listening to dark things. It doesn't bother me to go there.
You'll have your ears so full, you'll wish that you'd listened to it before you talked. But I'm kind of glad you didn't, because you let me just be kind of free and goofy. Because yeah, it's really heavy and it's very nefarious, and you will see that this member that was so evil was on America's Top Most Wanted, and he actually died in prison here in America. But I think he died, they say natural causes, but he was strangled by inmates. But either way, oh, don't want to go down that road. But go over to this is actually happening and leave me a message. And if you heard of me here with Bridget on Fierce Boys, drop a little something there so I know that that's how you found me. And I'll just send you something special from there.
Oh, that's sweet of you. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
thank you for everything today. Thank you for all that you shared. Like, seriously, so many golden nuggets here. This was such
well,
an honor
great.
to have you and for my listeners. So I
It
really
was
appreciate
my
it.
pleasure, Bridget. And you caught me just all over the place, but I want to just really feed you this amazing hush posh smorgasbord before our time's up. So I tried to pick and choose some delicious things for you all to chew on and enjoy. And if it serves you, take it, do something with it. If it doesn't, just leave it there.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it was perfect. So
Well, thank you. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Message me if you'd like. If not, that's totally fine as well.
perfect.
Bye, Bridget. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today on the Fierce Voice podcast. I truly hope you found healing insight, tools, and a space held for you in this journey. We are all in this together, and you are not alone. You can find me, your host, Bridget Gildemaster, on all social media platforms, and check out my website at www.bridgetgildemaster.com, where you can listen to past Fierce Voice episodes, check out my media features, find my books, and inquire about booking me for your next virtual or in-person event. My keynotes are impactful with real-life stories, actionable tools, and inspiration for healing after a life-altering experience. Or check out my workshop event to learn more about how you can prevent abuse in your area. Have a wonderful day, and we'll catch you next time on the Fierce Voice Podcast.